Good evening and welcome to the meeting of our regular board meeting on Monday, March 18th, 2024. We are in the St. Peter Community Center Governor's Room. It is 6:30 p.m. We will call the meeting to order. First thing we should do, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. We need to consider and adopt the agenda before us and available in the board book packet.
So moved. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is adopted. We do not have any members of the public in the audience. Welcome, Kimberly, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when people request to speak, they will give you their name to let you know that they want to speak. But at this point, we don't have anyone here. So no one has requested to speak, correct?
Correct.
Awesome.
We requested a few.
Next up, approval of consent agenda items. This can be found in the packet in front of you and also on the board book. If there are any items you'd like to discuss, we can do that too.
I'd like to discuss one. And after there's discussion, I will have Seth Putz, our new operations facilities and, wait, no. Oh my gosh, it's been a long day.
Operations and Maintenance Director.
Thank you. Has joined us this evening, and I'd like him to share a little bit about that South Elementary School exterior wall repair project that appears in the consent agenda.
So this is a project I just kind of took up, Mark kind of spearheaded it, and I just kind of took it over a little bit and finished it. In front of you, we have a proposal from Acme Tuck Pointing and Restoration. From their bid and everything that's involved with what they did, we decided, it's my recommendation that you follow with them. It's quite a bit less than the next bid on that. Everything in here, what they do, is pretty much, we talked to them, we got their bond, the insurance, everything needed, and that's just my recommendation that we go ahead and move it down.
And this was something that had been included in the long-term facilities
Yes,
maintenance
it is.
plan.
Yes.
I believe it's been put off a couple of times now, and so we should move forward with doing this.
Yeah, I took a tour with Mark, and there was a few spots that need immediate attention, and they're neglected, it's gonna become worse. Any questions?
I have a question, because I'm just a question person, but on that little sheet that you did where it says the base bid and then the alternative option bid, like what is that? The 16 or the 18,000?
I'm sorry, I do not have that.
I'm sorry.
That's what
You can't see what I'm just looking at in front of me? I mean, it's
I do. I got everything except this one.
that.
So what this is, in between the two companies, Mark and I sat down to make sure we have proof of insurance and bonding. We got both of that from both companies. Project process and procedures, both of them put that in their proposal. The base bid is the big one right there. TMI coating was the first bid, Acme Tuck Pointing was the second one. That's where the difference is on their base bid. On the backside of that, for Acme, they have an initial 18,750. That's if something that is kind of.
Well, and I have it here too. I was just wondering, so like the other company, did they just bid it all as one big thing and then Acme just broke it out into two?
They did,
Okay,
yep, yes, they did.
so we don't really know if it'll be the 66 or the full I guess it
It'll be
really
the
doesn't matter.
66. We went through that work and I did, and the
I like that.
18750 is not needed at this time.
Oh, I love tuck pointing.
That's one of the necessary evils. Any other questions? Thank you for the question, Tracy.
I just want you to know that I just looked at that. It's very exciting, so.
Yep. Oh, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Al. Anything else on the consent agenda? We do need to make a motion in a second to approve.
Mr. Chair, I will move the consent agenda approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other items to talk about with the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. Thank you. It does not appear that we have a student spotlight tonight.
We do not.
That's sad.
It is.
I like that.
Me too. We'll have one next time.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. We will move into action items. The first action item is considering approval of the 2023 through 2025 SPEA teachers contract.
Yes, we went through negotiations with the SPEA leadership group and the negotiations team. We met several times. There were quite a few language items that we were working on. Part of that was due to legislative changes during the last session, so working through earned safe and sick time and a few other pieces involved with leaves. And then made many just corrections to some of the verbiage. And I will let members of the negotiations team make further comments.
Yeah, a long process, always was insightful at the end of it. I'm pleased that we settled and had an agreement. I'm always frustrated that we, I feel like teachers deserve more than they receive on a national level, and that's always pulling at us. At the same time, our limited resources that we are given by the state and federal governments, we have a bucket to work within. And so those two forces are always pulling at us. But everyone agreed with the settlement, and we get to fight on for another cycle.
One more year.
Yeah, one more year.
I guess I'd like to say that the whole process, as has been the case with all the units that we've worked with, has been very civil and a positive relationship between the parties has always existed. One thing I would like to mention about the agreement with the teachers is that based on some things we heard up at the legislature today, hopefully these things won't happen, but there may be some difficulties based upon language that we've placed in the document being contradicted by changes in the earned safe and sick time. And so when we met with the individual legislators that we met with, we tried to impress upon them, if they're gonna make changes, don't make them in the middle of a contract period or exempt school districts from those changes because of the fact that we've negotiated these agreements and by law we can't reopen our agreement. And that was the other option I gave them, and the one guy said, no way we're doing that, so. to allow us to reopen the agreement, so. It's just something that the legislature oftentimes, I don't think, stops and looks at all the details when they start making legislation. And so we have a couple things that will be impacted by potential legislation.
How are we in comparison to settlements and to other districts in terms of percentage-wise? Like, are we above? Are we below? Are we in the middle
We're slightly below the state average,
in terms of percentages?
yes. This includes a 4% and a 4.5% the following year. And I'm trying to remember what the state average was.
I thought we were slightly above the state average.
We were slightly above.
Yeah. I'm thinking our initial offer is slightly above the, I can't,
And on
I'd
the
have to-
salary improvement,
Yeah.
we're slightly above. When you factor in everything, we don't have numbers. for this
Yeah, when you
agreement.
factor in insurance or
Sure.
whatever
Yeah,
else,
right.
so.
And that's one of the difficulties that we always have. It would seem like an easy mechanism to say, well, we'll just compare ourselves to how other districts are doing it, or how things have shaken out in XYZ district across the state. Until you realize that each of those districts often have wildly differing compensation packages, benefits packages, different rulings of, like, you know, maybe they have PTO, maybe they don't, or, you know, there's just different mechanisms in play. And so it's hard to get apples to apples. And there's really no central database that we can use that breaks those things down to, like, equalize them into a widget so we can get a true comparison. They just don't really exist. So it's a gut feel at some point of the game.
I know that during conversations today, as other people were testifying and sharing information, and they were saying what the average total cost of a teacher was, and some of them were over twice our average cost, which really gave me pause to think, okay, either they have very senior staff or they have a very advanced pay scale. Those were metro areas, so they are going to be higher, but I was slightly thrown a kilter.
Mr. Chair, if I may just add a comment relative to the negotiations. As Mr. Dixon just indicated, it was a very pleasant conversation for the most part. We greatly thank and appreciate the teachers for their very professional decorum. I was just reading yesterday, as a matter of fact, or the day before, in the Minneapolis Tribune, and take it for what it's worth, but they indicated that the average salary in Minnesota varies significantly, as you just mentioned, Mr. Gosseth, by district. The highest was Wayzata, not a surprise. And nationally, Minnesota ranks 16th in terms of the teacher salaries, slightly below the national average. I won't mention the state that ranks lowest, but I'm guessing that if we gave you a list of 5, you can pretty readily choose it. It is further south than we are, considerably. But anyway, we like to treat teachers and all staff fairly, but again, as was mentioned earlier, we only have limited resources, but we do the best we can.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you to the negotiations team
Thank you.
for the work that you put in. All right, so we need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to consider approval of the 2023 through 2025 teachers contract, SPEA contract. Any additional comments, discussion items? Discussion. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion.
Wait a minute. We have to direct Tracy to abstain.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
As the,
There's a statute on
Spouse
the
of
books
a-
that says the spouse of a,
It just got put on?
no, it's been,
I never abstained.
it just was at the officers'
Okay.
workshop, I was made aware of that.
Okay.
I'll abstain then.
so Tracy has to abstain.
Good thing I didn't vote no.
Yeah. So do we re-vote?
We can, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions? Yeah. Tracy abstains. Motion carries. We have approved the 2023 through 2025 SPEA contract. Nay like a horse?
I was gonna say nay like I opposed the contract.
Oh.
I was kidding.
All right, next up, consider approval of the revised fiscal year 2024 budget. Ms. Gratian.
All right, well, I have come to share the unfortunate news of our 24 and 25 budgets. So we are going to start with 24. So fiscal year 24 is the current school year that we are in, 23-24. You should have 4 documents in your board book pertaining to this. The first one is in relation to our ADMs. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a number of columns. Those are the ADMs that we were funded on in previous years, actual numbers. You'll see our 2024, our fiscal year 24 projected ADMs. So we're sitting at, our estimate for this year is 2,068 students. Note that this is unweighted, so the majority of our funding is based on weighted numbers. This is our unweighted number. And then to the columns to the right, 25 and 26, are our estimates for moving forward. I will note that our ADMs are up from where we had initially predicted they were going to be. We're up about 35 students from where we thought. So that is good news, but we are still at about the same rate. As you can see in 23, we're at 2071. And again, we are looking at 2068 for the budget revision that we have here. The second document is just elaborating on where we get those numbers from. So as a reminder, we get our general education aid from the resident students in the seat, open enrolled students in the seat, and then students who either we tuition out, so students that are at MVED, or care and treatment students. So this is just an elaboration on how we came to arrive at that 2,068 number. We did adjust a few. This is based on January MARS data. So we adjusted down about 7 students just based on what we estimate we're going to lose from now until then. Are there any questions on ADM before I move forward? All right. So this is where then we get to, you should have a blue sheet. It is, it's a white sheet with blue headings. So this is our summary. Oh. Okay, well, I have a blue sheet with summaries. So it looks a little bit like this. General fund is at the top, food service and our other funds are going to be at the bottom. So if you start on the left, that was our fund balance coming into this year, July 1st of 23. As you move to the right, we have our estimated revenues, expenditures, and then our fund balance where we think we're gonna end 6/30 of 24. Moving to the right a little bit more, you'll see whether the fund is increasing or decreasing by dollar amount and percentage from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And then the very far column is where when we came into this year with our adopted budget, where we had anticipated we were going to be, the difference between where we thought we were going to be and where we're ending, both in dollars and percentages. So that's just working our way from left to right. Now, if we go from top to bottom, our general fund unassigned, we came into this year with $3.3 million. We are estimating that our general fund is going to decrease by $1.1 million, leaving us with a $2.2 million fund balance in our unassigned. The big key players in this decrease, so we had planned to move $835,000 from our assigned funds up to unassigned before this, at the end of fiscal year 23. We had decided not to do that, knowing that the Mend the Middle project was going to be coming, and we wanted to be able to have some reserves to take care of unexpected expenses that came about as a result of that project. So we didn't move the money at that time, but it had been in the budget that that money was going to have been moved. The other major change is a result of negotiations. So when we did the adopted budget, we had estimated a 2% increase specifically on teachers, but on salaries as a whole across the board. And as you just approved, our teachers came in at 4% in this first year. So that was an additional $300,000 on the budget that we hadn't anticipated when we did our adopted budget. So those are the two major players in the unassigned fund balance. As you work your way down, prepaids are just things that we pay for in 24 that are part of 25. Our restricted funds are going to be things, safe schools, compensatory, English learners. So those funds that we receive, but they are restricted in their purposes, and we have to use it just for those purposes. For the most part, we try and use those funds up every year to the best that we can. It's not always possible, but we try to. The assigned funds, like I mentioned, that was one of the funds that we had not moved up to unassigned. But those are things that we target expenses that we know that are coming that we need to have set aside, severance, VEBA, those kinds of things. And then our operating capital and LTFM. So those all make up our general fund. As we continue to move down, we have food service. So we actually estimate that our food service, we're going to decrease our fund balance by $182,000. Part of that is because we have had more expenses than we thought. First of all, just with the price of food, things are going up with negotiations, and where we settled with our food service group, that is also going up. And we're still trying to figure out with Minnesota schools and feeding Minnesota the free meals for students, how that funding piece is going to work with the federal rate, with the state rate, with what parents are paying for second meals and entrees. The revenue side, we're also sort of trying to weave our way through. But we are predicting that that fund balance is actually going to decrease. Community service, we are estimating a decrease in the overall community service fund of $275,000. So that's actually looking better than we had anticipated by about $52,000. The big thing to note here is our school readiness, and we talked about this a lot at the business committee meeting, but our school readiness program is something that our district has been committed to. Unfortunately, it's not funded to the rate that we need it to be, and so it is continuing to have a decreasing negative fund balance. So that's something that we'll have to focus on this year, and as we move into future years, what we're going to do about that. Debt redemption is obviously our bonds. We have our scholarships. And then our insurance fund, on a happy note, is actually doing very well and running very sustainably. So we hope that that continues. And that was obviously a good decision 2 years ago when we went to self-insurance. So overall, this is the 24 revised budget as we are proposing it. The last attachment is this same information, but just laid out a little bit in more detail. So outlining those restricted funds with the fund balances, outlining the assigned funds with those fund balances, et cetera, et cetera. What questions do you have? I know that was a lot of information and not a lot of good news, so.
Could you speak a little bit to the dental reserve? I know that we're also self-insured in dental, is that?
Yep, we are, so we are self-insured in both. So if you look at the detailed, the second of the two budget attachments, so we have self-insurance for dental and health. We had to do a manual adjustment because the fund balances between the two have been wonky over the last 2 years as we were trying to figure out the coding for those. But our fund balance for dental is going to be at about $51,000 at the end of this year. I will say that in at least the 8 years that I've been here, we have not, to my knowledge, increased dental rates. And so that is one recommendation that NIS is going to bring forth this year to the business committee and to the board, that we increase our dental rates because they've been the same for at least 7 to 8 years.
that first page when we were talking about FY '24 and the decision not to transfer that 835,000. That line, so that came originally when the new high school was built, and it was unsure whether operating the new building was going to have more expense. And so, very wisely, put some money aside at the time. It was 1.6 million. And then, as we were in the pandemic, some of that money was used. Half of it was last year to be able to maintain staffing in lower class size and provide more interventions for students. And then it was planned that the second half would be used for this year. That's still, I mean, we still could make that transfer from assigned to unassigned to help address that 1.1 million. You know, as we move forward in the coming weeks, actually this week, I have some large blocks of time set aside with principals and the admin team to start making plans for how we address the deficits that you see in '24 and that you'll learn about here in '25, and I can speak to that in a little bit, but that may be one of the recommendations that we include is transferring part or all of that assigned fund.
That would be one-time money.
Correct.
Which, if you look, I mean, over the last number of years, our expenses have generally in our unassigned fund have been outweighing our revenues for the last 3 or 4 years. So it would be one-time money. It wouldn't fix the problem that we kind of have at hand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It would help now, but not fix the problem.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it could save us
Band-Aid.
from cutting people now, but 2 years from now, we'd still be in the same problem.
Yeah, kicking it
The
down.
can is what they call that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Superintendent Gronseth, I don't, maybe this is not the time, maybe it's coming with the fiscal '25 question, but you mentioned having blocks of time to talk with administrative leadership and others. Like, what does this whole mean? Right? You know, like, what do those conversations need to involve to make decisions about how to get out of the hole? Or make the hole more shallow?
Yeah. And that is part of the FY, I mean, it's
Okay.
really both years.
Right.
But it really has big implications. When you know, when we talk about FY '25, we'll see that it's much larger than the 1.1 indicated in FY '24. That's going to take some big decisions about restructuring, about services that we provide, really looking into every aspect of our budget as a district to see how we can continue to provide the highest quality education that we possibly can while meeting the fiduciary responsibilities of being a school district. So with FY '24 budget, this is, you are presenting a revised '24 budget to be approved. I don't approve, but, you know, accepted as
It's
a
factual.
revised budget.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly, it's factual.
So am I reading these numbers correctly? The revised budget that will be approved will end up with a fund balance that is higher than was projected?
That's what was adopted. So I'll let Megan.
So our general fund budget, our general fund balance as a whole, we had estimated that we were gonna be at 5.7 million. We are now estimating it's gonna be at 5.2 million. That's the general fund as a whole. If you look at just unassigned, we had estimated we were gonna be at 3.9 million, and now we're
Okay.
revising that to 2.2.
I was reading it backwards, so.
The second column from the right is really confusing, and I wasn't sure how to clarify that, but
That's why I wanted to clarify.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
I will move the adoption of the revised budget.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to consider approval of the revised fiscal '24 budget. Any further discussion? Comments, questions? Discussion.
I think we all recognize the situation needs to be dealt with prudently.
Yep. All right. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The revised fiscal '24 budget has been approved. Thank you, Megan.
More good news?
it's even better.
We need to now, are we taking action on this? Let's just discuss.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. No. That's LTFM.
The addendum would say that your action would be taking the recommended action for this next piece would be directing the administration to create a proposed balanced budget for FY '25.
Oh, then we have further discussion.
Yeah.
No, I mean.
No, this is the next
No, no,
item
no.
now.
Oh, got it.
He was
Yep.
asking what action went with that, and
Because the next item just says discuss the projected fiscal year '25 budget. So we are on that now. Megan?
All right, so moving forward to 24-25, you should have 3 documents this time in relation to this. Again, the first one is looking at ADMs. This is the driver of our largest source of revenue. So the first number of columns are our ADMs that we received funding on. If you look at FY '24, that's the current year we're in, you'll see that 2,068 number again. Fiscal year '25, we are estimating that we are going to be down 50 students. So that is fiscal year '25, and then you'll see the out years after that. We did compare this to the demographic study that was done last February, and it's actually above where the demographic study had put us. The other thing that I did want to note is that we adjusted our ADM estimates to more align with MDE and Region 5 and how they suggest that we run our estimates. So in trying to figure out this number, this is one thing that MDE will say is the hardest thing to predict is your student counts and where they're gonna land. So we felt that the number, if we arrived at 2019, was an accurate number, but also we wanted to be realistic. So that is our estimate, is that we are going to be down about 50 students going into next year. With that being said, then we shift to the document that should look similar to what you saw for fiscal year '24, same format. The only thing that is missing is the far right column. So we'd be starting the year with $2.2 million in our general fund unassigned. You'll see our revenues and expenses. The adjustment is just moving some expenses from our general fund to cover our restricted funds. Sorry, so should look like this. Hopefully you have that.
Does it say about top FY '25 preliminary comma adopted budget dash summary?
Yep.
Page 97.
There we go.
97 is right here.
Page 97.
I don't think that's it.
The 97's kind of hidden.
The 97 is.
Right to landscape.
Where is it?
It's under action item.
4, 3.
Sorry, sorry.
I got you.
Okay, so the adjustment is just moving funds from general fund to restricted funds to cover some of those. As you can see, right now, we are estimating a $2.2 million decrease to our unassigned fund balance, which would put us at a negative fund balance for our unassigned. Moving down, we have our prepaids again, our restricted, so those learning and development, safe schools, early English learner. So that fund balance is increasing slightly. Our assigned fund balance is increasing slightly, and then operating cap and LTFM has a very small decrease. So overall, our general fund as a big picture is decreasing by $1.9 million. So the big things coming in here, like I mentioned, those 50 students, which equate to roughly $500,000. That's revenue that we estimated is going to decrease. And then with all of our negotiations, and we estimated health insurance right now, they're saying we're probably going to come in between 7 and 8%. We entered all of our contracts as they've been negotiated, had to estimate the 2 that are remaining. And we have $1.5 million in salaries and fringe that are an increase in 25. So add that to the inflationary costs of all of the other things, and that's how we got to the $2.2 million decrease in the general fund unassigned. If you keep going down further, we have food service, so it's kind of more of the same, increased cost of food with the negotiations, and we're still trying to figure out the revenue on food service, so we're estimating the food service is going to be decreasing. Community service, you'll see a number similar in decrease from 24 to 25, so we're estimating community service will be down about $356,000. Then we have debt redemption for our bonds, the scholarship, and again, the insurance fund we're still estimating that that's going to be doing okay. So the last attachment is just more detailed information with the same summary.
This reflects it. Everything were to continue as it were.
Correct. If we were to
Based
make
on-
no changes to contracts, if we were to make no changes to staffing, if we were to take the insurance rate recommendation that they're going to give us in a few weeks, that is how we estimated this.
Well, we can't do that. In my opinion.
Clearly.
So we looking out 5 years, we project we're gonna be 140 students lower in 5 years than we are today.
Well, the projection of students isn't, that's if it were to follow
Right.
the current trajectory.
Right, okay.
What the demographer said is that we would be, we'd have this dip and we'd kind of level off, and then it would slowly start to increase over time.
Okay.
We hope that, with the new housing that is going in, with the continued growth of the community, that we would continue to see enrollment numbers increase as well. Right now, over the last 4 years, since COVID, the population of St. Peter has actually increased, but the number of school-aged children in our community has decreased. And, we talked about that when we looked at number of kids transferring in and transferring out, that it's not that there's been a big change and students are opting out of the district or out of the region. It's just that there aren't as many school-aged children as there was. I'm not sure why, if it's a generational difference or if it's people waited during COVID, unsure times of not having as many students, and we'll see a bump, but it's where our current reality is.
lack of housing for larger families is a driving factor as well.
Correct. In the past 2 years, we've lost over 100 Somali students based on their families not having available housing in the community.
So we turn our eyes to architecting a solution. Are we taking action on that tonight?
We are directing administration to recommend budgetary adjustments to create a balanced fiscal budget. So we are saying, go forth and do work.
Yeah.
That is the directive we are deciding on as a board tonight.
Yeah, I think the budgetary information we received this week and tonight is shocking and surprising, and we can transfer one-time funds around to do a thing to buy some time, but that will do little to nothing to actually solve the problem. In some ways, there's an easy equation. If you have fewer students, you must educate those students with fewer, smaller infrastructure, which including teachers and people
Services.
and services. So in some ways, that's very easily understood. But the way that we do that is less understood and probably more nuanced. And so I would expect that, rather than maybe looking at some of the most typical levers that would be pulled in this scenario, now would be a really good time to deconstruct the game and the board and re-architect it from, potentially the ground up to see what can be done. We know we have things like a wonderful principal who is recently retired and a school opening there. We know the capacity of those buildings. Are there options, opportunities to do things differently? Maybe. Now would be a great time to see some real in-depth, creative and alternative solutions that could potentially help us survive, not only the 2, 4, 6 year time frame, but the 10, 20, 30 year time frame.
With the anticipation that state funding is likely not gonna skyrocket and enrollment is likely going to decrease.
Right?
This is a long-term
Yeah.
problem.
The cavalry that is the state funding is not.
Right.
So this is an in-house problem that we will require in-house solutions. Unfortunately.
Last time we did this, we were able to pull a big lever at the middle school, which made for some unpopular decisions, but it was a big decision that took a large chunk of the problem. It was very sad for the middle school, but it took a lot of the decision. Now it's gonna touch a lot more people, so. Good luck with that.
Yeah, so I think we're all very involved and take it personally at many levels and want to ensure that we construct the best path forward. And that might mean more vigorous oversight or at least check-ins. I know that we have our study sessions that are regularly scheduled. In my mind, this topic will be like top of agenda for a while. So I don't want to lose track of that. I'd like to, regular check-ins. Things are going to be changing and moving at all times, but I think now is a good time to have high awareness.
And I'm encouraged to hear the plan not to kick it down the road, that this is gonna be a plan that is gonna be a long-term solution rather than just Band-Aid for right now and then the heck with what happens later. So the long-term planning is critical.
So you don't need a motion or anything to direct, to say.
Well, we do, we need this does require a motion the motion is that we direct administration to recommend budgetary adjustments to create a balanced fiscal year 25 budget.
Well,
So moved.
and I'll second that.
Okay, perfect. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion, comments, questions?
We didn't really say anything about the reserve policy, which is how many days?
60 days.
Is that
And I
more?
see we were down to .2,
If that doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah.
if we don't make adjustments.
Correct.
So I think people need to understand that to be fiscally prudent, that doesn't mean we come in with a balanced budget with a zero reserve.
Right.
That there should be
Yeah, it's
as
not,
close as possible to the policy.
Do we actually have a policy that says 60 days, or is it just,
We do.
we do?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in the, I'm not sure if it's 100s or 200s, but it's in there.
And that number, a target number, like we want to have a budget of saved cash to be able to run the district for X number of days. That X for the number of days has fluctuated over time. We've worked really hard to get that number higher, knowing that state finance is often a storm to be weathered, and it's important to have some reserves, but we do have control over that number.
Well, I just know from when we were up at the state conference that St. Peter does have a high number there. I just want to know if we want to, do we want to make budget cuts to have that number be 60 days? Or do we want budget cuts to have that number be 50 days? Or, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
I would expect that is on the table.
Yeah, that can be part of the
You know-
recommendations, is to lower that number.
I mean, I'm talking like 10, but, you know.
Yeah,
Right.
but I do think that's a tricky game to play when
Yeah.
you're taking money out of
Yeah.
the piggy bank, because that can
Be careful.
spiral quickly.
And I think it would be with an understanding of like a gradual, like this year, and then we're going back up, kind of thing. Or whatever the board decides,
Yeah.
because it's not Tracy's decision. I'm just thinking out loud because I'm a problem solver, so.
No, for sure. I think the going back up part is not the easy part.
I understand that. I saw a lot of smirks around the
Yeah.
table.
So, St. Peter and St. Peter Schools has a long tradition of working together to find creative solutions to problems. And whenever our admin team or our principal team is together, it is often said we do hard things together. And this is one of those things that we will be approaching together as a team and really looking at any creative solutions that we can. We know some of them might be easier accomplished than other things. Some other areas that are bigger changes may take longer to implement, but we will be working together and we'll be working with our teams and our buildings as well to help with that. And we'll make sure that the board has information along the way so that you feel like you have the information that you need to know that we've turned over as many stones as we can to try to address the problem while continuing the proud tradition of St. Peter's schools and the education that we're able to provide. Also know that we are definitely not alone in this journey. I know that there are districts all over the state who are addressing large deficits as well. And so I know that there are many conversations going on around school board tables this week and this month that are very similar to ours, and they feel very much the same.
This is the one we gotta solve.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to compliment Megan on her putting the rollout and the projections together, recognizing it's not the news that anybody wants, but it's very important to be realistic and conservatively realistic and not arbitrarily raise WADMs, et cetera, just to be accurate and practical as we possibly can. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Megan. We did have a motion? And a second? No, but we have a motion and a second. Okay. Any further, any last discussion? Otherwise, we will proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries to direct the administration to recommend budgetary adjustments to create a balanced fiscal '25 budget. Thank you. Next item up, consider approval of the revised resolution adopting the fiscal year '25 long-term facilities maintenance 10-year plan. Is that Megan again?
It is. You guys have me one more time.
Oh, nice.
We're almost done.
Do it.
It's like the
Yeah,
Super
I should
Bowl.
need a name tag for myself here.
Well-
Okay, well, this will look similar to what you had seen in July when we adopted our 10-year plan at that point. But Barrett and ICS went through and helped us adjust this for the project that's going to be happening at the middle school. So if you look, any of the, is yours in color or is it in black and white?
We don't have one.
You don't have one at all?
We're cutting costs.
Oh,
We don't have a color print.
Well, actually, we don't.
okay. Well, so we have our 10-year plan. The adjustments that were made were the adjustments. I'm not sure if you can.
We don't have to worry about it. You saw most of the plan.
You saw most of the plan. The only adjustments were adjustments that are going to be made specific to the project, both on the expense side and then on the revenue side. So we are required to adjust this because of our project, and then resubmit it to MDE. So those were really the only changes that were made, were changes specific to the project happening at the middle school. I don't know, because you don't have it in front of you, what questions I can answer.
This is a resolution?
Yep.
So tell them how much they
Trying
spend
to
a year,
remember
how much they get.
the details.
I know.
I cannot remember. So you have the information in front of you.
I do have the information.
Is there a way to distill the highlights, like the top five?
Let me take a shot at it if I get it. If I get, no, I don't wanna read that. I can't see it, guys. No, I can't. This will be, I'm hoping this will be a little easier.
Are you all familiar with Michael Hoheisel?
So, nice to see.
Oh, yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nice to see you again. So remember, your long-term facility maintenance program, you get $380 per kid.
Yep.
So you're getting about, revenue of, if you beat me to it, you're getting annual revenue for those kids. You're getting, I thought I would be able to race through it. I'm gonna go to the expenditure sheet.
Yeah, fun.
Revenue sheet isn't it true? So you're getting, what'd you say?
Like $898.
Yep, just shy of 900,000 a year. So as that annual money comes in, you've allocated that between, tuck pointing, your favorite subject, electrical interior surfaces, roof systems, site projects, meaning paving, sidewalks, reconditioning of the tar, mechanical systems, plumbing, all those are your deferred maintenance items. So this merely is saying that, okay, with this plan, you're going to move forward with we're asking you to adopt a resolution moving forward with $23.5 million worth of bonds. Now remember, this LTFM is for the facilities portion of your budget. You have just been talking about your general budget or your operational side of the budget, so 2/5. So we're independently raising money or through either utilizing dollars that are gonna come eventually through that 900 collection of 900,000, or we're saying that the indoor air quality plan, which raises dollars outside your current budget, fund this. And they raise the budget through a tax, through the tax levy collection, so to speak. So with that, the IAQ portion of this is about 20.2 million of the project, and the deferred maintenance projects that are part and parcel that you're in the walls, but they don't qualify, is about 2.4 of that. And then you're asking for one more component with the election. So all this plan does is say it takes any of the items in this 23 million that possibly were in the next 10 years of the plan, and it expends it within the next 3, but it puts it with the bond issue. So then we're hopefully making that 900,000 go farther each year down the road, because you've taken a chunk of these deferred maintenance items out. How is that for a horrible explanation?
That's pretty good, pretty good.
So, but that's what we're, essentially then we modify that plan, and you'll get to do this again
In July.
in July. Assuming we don't completely get it revamped legislatively, and according to Superintendent Gronseth, nothing's getting done after meetings today. So, or not major changes as we had hoped that were floating through with the governor's bill, as it was revealed today. Since his inside information is also my inside information, because it's the same person.
Routine procedure.
Okay,
It appears to me it's routine.
thank you, Ken, for putting your Captain Crunch decoder ring on there, and letting me know what happened. I really appreciate your knowledge there.
Please tell me if I'm wrong, but it certainly appears to be a routine that we just simply need to
Just-
do.
Yep, we're just doing it's like revising your original budget.
Exactly.
We're just revising the plan and stating that the intention of, we're gonna borrow this money, but we're maximizing the use of your other available dollars, but those available dollars are basically spent year 3 through 10 where we modify the plan.
And we can always hope that they increase the amount.
We were working
Hold on.
we were working legislatively to include, a group of us met and we convinced the secret person to ask the governor to not increase the amount, but to place roof projects and paving projects into the indoor air quality bucket. So that your $380 could be used for walls, carpeting, very sustainable items with that $380 per kid. The reason we ask this is that there's probably, at least 40 schools out within the state that have major roofing issues. And if they bundle their entire $380 per kid this year, they can't afford to fix their entire roof and pay it off over the next 30 years. Roofing expenses have just, as many other expenses, we ebb and flow through construction expenses, but roofing expenses have skyrocketed.
That 383 has not increased for years, has it?
I wanna say that if this was implemented in 15, we phased into it in 17, so, yeah, 6 years, 6, 7.
Yeah, I heard it every 6 years.
Yep, that's about right.
For an increase.
Well, you think that that's not, I mean, as you know, as you reviewed carefully the plans for the last year,
Yeah.
these items were deemed not sexy by a previous legislative body. They've deemed that you can make these hard decisions without the voters because the voters aren't gonna vote for a redo of your indoor air quality or a roof or fixing a wall or a mirror or replacement. It doesn't get a lot of attention if you're not consistently pushing and pushing and pushing. And I believe the powers that be have felt that getting the inflation factor put on the basic formula was a big step one. I think the hope was that we would turn an inflation factor on the 380 similar to what we turned on for the basic formula. But we think that idea is probably being pushed out till later 2020s to early 2030 when we could finally get that done, which is very sad. A couple of us will be retired by then, Megan, not to name any names.
Some of us probably won't even be around.
Mr. Chair, do we have a motion on the floor?
We do not yet.
Okay, then I move to, just a moment.
Move the resolution.
Yes, I move the resolution stating the intent to issue general obligation bonds to finance projects for the next 10 years. Oh,
Move the resolution, it would be move the resolution.
the 10-year, long-term
Revised.
LTFM.
Revised,
Yes, the revised resolution, sorry, adopting the fiscal year 25 LTFM 10-year plan. My apologies.
Oh, you're good.
Couldn't be more clear.
Yeah. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? This is a resolution, so we need to do a roll call vote. We'll start here. Ms. Ransbach?
Aye.
Mr. Rossi?
Aye.
Ms. Stewie?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Coe?
Aye.
Dixon?
Aye.
Ms. Martin? The resolution passes. We have approved the revised fiscal year 25 long-term facilities maintenance 10-year plan. Thank you. Next up, how about another resolution?
The story continues. Same
Consider
topic.
approval of the resolution stating the intent to issue general obligation bonds to finance projects within the 10-year plan.
So basically, we covered both of those because they were intertwined with the last discussion. However, like the resolution that you've been involved with us previously, we use this resolution, we call it a parameters resolution, in that we're setting goals of the future borrowing. So this allows us to prepare all the material, talk with rating agencies, talk about your 60-day reserve plan to maintain our rating. It also sets forth that this puts you in the credit enhancement program, so that in the event of a catastrophe that happens locally, that we have experienced in my lifetime, while I was working with St. Peter, way back when with a different company, when the tornado came through, the state would step in and make the payment if the district couldn't. So that's called the credit enhancement program. That also helps any investors know that gives them a little bit of more, it makes them less risk adverse because that's in place. We say that we will not purchase these bonds at more than 5.25%. And I believe the last piece is that it's used to fund the cost of indoor air quality improvements at the St. Peter Middle School site and various deferred maintenance projects included with the plan that you just passed. And the last piece of this just says that it allows your administration to do certain items of like signing the credit enhancement resolution and preparing other documents. And the final is upon pricing, Bill or Megan are allowed to sign along with a director of the school board officer to sign the purchase agreement. When that's all done, we bring it back to the board for final ratifying of the awarding resolution and all the mortgage paperwork. So this kicks it off. We are definitely under 5% right now. We're really close to in that mid-4s to maybe even better. Hopefully, what are we? I think we got a message on my email this afternoon from my corporate office, said that we're 48 hours away from Powell talking again to the nation, and so we'll know in 2 more days where we sit as far as where they think the next round of cuts are. So that's basically this resolution gets us ready to prepare to sell these bonds in the near future, and then but that doesn't mean that we're selling them tomorrow. We obviously have an election going on as well, and we will watch on that, because if we can bundle the two together, that makes it even more economical for the district.
So as a reminder, the middle school HVAC project we approved in December requires the sale of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $23,325,000 to fund the project. So this resolution will move forward with the sale of bonds.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. This is another resolution, so we need to go around the table. Ms. Rosbach.
Aye.
Mr. Russell. Aye. Ms. Stewart.
Aye.
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 Ayes have it. We have passed the resolution stating the intent to issue general obligation bonds to finance projects within the 10-year plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6, consider petition of landowners for detachment and annexation from one school district to another.
A little respite from talking about finances. We received a petition from a landowner, which happens to be Northland Lutheran Church. And they have a parsonage close to the church that happens to be right on the edge of the district. In fact, it's a little bump out on our district. And how this works is if a landowner would like to move from one school district to another, they need to petition both of the school districts that are involved, the one that they're currently in and the one that they would like to be in. Both have to pass resolutions, and then those resolutions move forward to the county, who then approves or disapproves of the final action. In this particular case, there's no financial implication because the property is owned by a tax-exempt organization, so it's not about tax dollars. For this one, there's a preference for St. Peter on part of the family that's living in the parsonage. And so we are following up on their petition by bringing it to you for consideration. My recommendation would be moving forward with it. There's no negative effect to the district, and in fact could lead to future students for St. Peter.
I'll move the resolution.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So it would just mean that they wouldn't have to probably open enroll their kids, or is that the motivating factor? Okay.
Any further
Right now,
discussion?
the students are they at Nicollet, or did I hear
They are
they're
homeschooled.
Homeschooled. Okay.
My understanding is, one, they could be involved with St. Peter athletics, which as homeschool students in another districts, they would not be able to, and that there could be time in the future that they want to attend school, and they would want to attend in St. Peter if they were going to attend a public school.
Mhm.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the resolution. We will go around the table. Ms. Rosbach.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Dewey.
I,
Aye.
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 The ayes have it. Resolution has been accepted. Petition for landowners for detachment and annexation from one school district to another.
And then we will forward this to the requesters, and then they will continue the process.
Next up, MVED facilities discussion.
Back to difficult conversations. In the study session, you saw this presentation, and we had a lot of discussion. You had a lot of discussion as a board. I shared information. Given our financial state and the implications, the financial implications of this plan on St. Peter and St. Peter taxpayers, while it hurts my heart because I love what this would do for our special ed programs and the expansion of those programs, at this time I cannot recommend approving this proposal based on the financial impact it would have on the district. And how that would play out in a decision is, you have three options as a board right now. You can totally overrule me and approve this and move forward with it, or you could make a motion and vote it down, or there could be a lack of a motion and there would be no action.
well, I will say that I agree that we can't do this because of the financial implications. If I had about, I don't know, however many $1 million or whatever we would need, I would do that. But I think there's some things that would be solved by us having this. And one thing is it would give our Rock Bend some space in that building to be able to expand their programs. And it obviously would allow for MVED to be able to have space for their level 4 program we have there, and some other programs that we've talked about at MVED, one of them being a transition program, which I hope by the time I'm done with this board, we can see through. But now is not the time, so that makes me very sad. But hopefully we can problem solve some of those things outside of purchasing or recommending MVED purchase building. So I was very, very excited about that, and it's one of those things where it's just, I guess the timing isn't right for it, so.
Some of the alternatives that were discussed with the MVED board and the MVED partner superintendents was making some adjustments to our building, investing in making some improvements, or even an addition to the current building. So I think if this is turned down, that those would be the next conversations, is how could we make some changes to be a better fit for MVED at that site.
So if this action item were to die for lack of a motion, we would be awaiting another set of action to potentially look at improvements in the existing building if that were to be, okay.
Correct.
And without physical space, there is just nothing that can be done in terms of a transition program. Because I just need to say again, if our ultimate goal is to have kids walk across the stage for graduation, and that's our goal, and we're just a machine that we're just kids to walk across the stage, then we do a great job. But there are kids, there are kids that need more than that. And I feel, and I know we're missing the mark on some of these kids. And so, do we need space, or do we need, And I know, I just got done saying we have to cut programs, but you know what I mean? But, ugh, you know, it's just, it's hard. And I don't wanna get going again, cause Ken gave me 2 Snickers to keep me stable, so I will stay stable, but, ugh.
I will say one of the conversations at embed was, rather than in making a major investment in a property like Scholarship America and remodeling, was for a specific transition program, could lease a much smaller space if that were the goal.
Is there a way that we could work out the division of the cost differently? I know it's based upon the number of special ed students that we have. But so many of our special ed students are served fully by our own staff. If you could somehow get credit for that and shift the cost of providing for the students that MVET is dealing with a little more equally amongst the actual students that they're doing, that would change some of those numbers and maybe make it doable. I know the other districts aren't gonna like that.
I'm gonna speak and then I'm gonna look at Megan and she's gonna tell me if I'm correct or not. But it is my understanding that different expenses at MVED are divided different ways. Some are equally among partner districts, others are by students served, others by how many students in your district. And so there is some of that already where we are.
But when we look at the cost.
I got the nod.
Yeah.
Good.
We look at the cost of the facility that's serving
Right.
students. And if we're paying a disproportionate share of that amount in comparison to the number of our students that are being served and the number of other students being served, I think that, there should be room for negotiation.
Right now, we are currently about 40% of MVED population. So 40% of the lease came out to be 350 something.
But are we 40% of the students that are in that actual building?
Mhm.
I think we've kind of all come to the understanding that right now is a time for some critical thinking and creative problem solving, and this is just one more, and I know that at the study session, there was good discussion, and not that I'm doing this to the administrative team, but I think that all of this comes together into a kind of an overall view of everything that we're doing, and how do we do it better and more fiscally responsibly. So I would say this goes in that pile.
It's potentially conceivable, I think we'll all probably have a consensus, and I can't speak for anyone, that it's not affordable for us to do with this format with additional $210,000 per year. But there's so many valuable things in here, and it's certainly possible that it could come back to us in a different form that is affordable. So, if we decline this or let it pass because of no motion, regardless of which route this goes, hopefully we'll be able to analyze this again, and perhaps in a doable form.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ken said.
I'm hearing nothing. We will move on. Last on the action items list, consider approval of a hockey cooperative agreement. Mr. Rohrkasse's been waiting.
With a great measure of patience.
Yep. Do you want us to repeat everything we've said already tonight?
Yeah, let's start,
To get your
can we
comment.
start over? Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Give me the gist of it. Does everybody have a copy of
Okay, so, we, as far as, the school is involved in our Minnesota River Bulldog Hockey Cooperative, got together to review the agreement, because the last one that we, were able to find and look at, I'm sure we have others, but the last one I was able to find through all the digging was back from 2008 and 9, when it was St. Peter, LeSueur Henderson, and then at the time La Center with Montgomery. And so we felt it was probably time to update this, because it included, well, TCU now as a district once they came together, and then also adding in Belle Plaine and Cleveland into our cooperative. So we have all 5 schools. So it was important to go through and update that to make sure that we had all 5 schools represented and they all had a voice at the table when we were looking at the cooperative agreement. So a lot of it is just kind of updating that. In the past, it was like, St. Peter and LeSueur Henderson was the main verbiage. Now it's trying to update that to make sure that, like I said, all districts are represented when we're talking about what is part of the agreement. So I tried to highlight some of the main things that have been changed. One of the main things that was changed is as far as the scheduling of games. It used to be the girls would kind of be scheduled through St. Peter and the boys would be scheduled through LeSueur. We've changed that mainly because of our agreement with the connection with the Big South Conference, which is what we're in for hockey, but also because it was pretty silly when schools would call and ask us to schedule a game for girls hockey and then say, what about boys? And I'd say, give, LeSueur Henderson a call to schedule that when, and then we'd be overlapping each other for home games and it was just a mess. So it got just changed to being on our plate, which just like with any scheduling when it comes to activities is also in conjunction with the other schools, but in this case also the head coaches as well. So just to help to ease that. So there's no confusion and just with the connection between the Big South. So that was the first main change that was highlighted. As you go through the expenses for salaries and benefits, everything is prorated depending on the number of participants you have in the program. That's all done through just based off a percentage that's given out to each school at the end of the seasons. But we did talk about the salaries. In the past, it was all based off of where you were working is what salary you received. So a lot of times it was that the girls' program was paid off through us, boys' program was paid through LeSueur. But that is, we don't pay the exact same, and so then you're looking at making sure that those are equaled out and everything along those lines. So our goal was to basically kind of create a separate pay scale that is very similar to all of ours as the 5 districts and try to find an average and make sure that those are the same or as best represented as we can, but it would be paying the hockey coaches separate compared to maybe what our teacher contract might say. Basically for those reasons is that right now, we had coaches from St. Peter going over to LeSueur to get paid for hockey because it paid more, and we wanted to make sure boys and girls were getting paid even, and it was just kind of a lot of a mess. This will allow that the teacher or the coaches, if they are teachers here in the district, get that money, but then also as part of their overall money that they're getting from the district, the TRA, all of those things come into play, obviously. So when we look at that, it'll be a main kind of a conglomerate of all 5 districts and what their pay scale is, but separate from maybe what the contract would be in depending on what district they're working at or representing. If they are not a teacher in any of our districts, then they would just be an employee through LeSueur, as that's the main fiscal agent for the hockey cooperative, if that makes sense. So that was one kind of the main, or one adjustment as well. And then number 10, I kind of alluded to it, but the completion of the hockey season, each additional district will be billed for the participation in the cooperative on a prorated basis. So it just takes into account that we had, 40 boys hockey players this year. St. Peter had 10 of them. Here's your percentage that you owe for everything that was paid: ice time, busing, coaches, equipment, anything else you can think of that would be covered throughout the entire hockey season. So some years that is 10%, and some years we're at 40%, which is pretty, pretty fluctuating, but so hard to say this is what it's going to be every year, but it really just does depend on the number of participants that we have here in St. Peter on a yearly basis. Other financial considerations, we had a couple of schools that allowed their students to go to activities for free, and us being one of them. Some schools required them to pay, or they could buy a student pass, and it kind of got to be a mess for the person selling tickets to, all right, which passes are allowed, who should be going in for free and whatnot. Basically, it was just made sure to be put in there that any passes from any of our 5 districts will be honored, including student passes, and students will be in free regardless of what they do at basketball or football games. So just making sure that we're all on the same page to make that easier as well, instead of doing a couple different things depending on the school. Couple other liability insurance is something that just needed to be updated. Since it's on there was 100,000 to 300,000. Probably need a few more zeros on there to cover that, so we'll make sure that's updated. But we get that through Mr. Pell each year. It's just making sure that this is updated as far as the correct number. Transportation, it was kind of pretty broad, or it was pretty broad. It still is, but it just kind of helps to make sure that each district is on the same page about what's expected. Some schools require all of their students to bus to every practice, every home game, away game, like us, for example, while others are more of like, all right, make sure you get there, good luck, kind of. And so it's really whatever the district requires or has set for them, and not just a set fee. The other piece is that St. Peter does provide transportation to all away games, so we use Saint's bus service for those games, and mainly because our students are picked up at the high school and given right over there, then they just continue on their way and brought back home instead of a bus dropping off. And if we use Le Sueur bus service, the bus would have to try and time that out to get them home anyhow. So that's the main reason for that. We provide that transportation to all away games for boys and girls. Continuing on, inclement weather. This is always a tricky one because you have schools that have that close for different reasons, or you have a widespread like TCU when you're talking about the center all the way over to Montgomery and along that whole corridor there. They might have a lot more of a weather pattern than we do, or blowing snow, which has a bigger impact on their routes going home and busing. And so in the past, it was always kind of like if St. Peter closes, then it was a domino effect of everybody else. Well, there's just no practice. So this allowed us to have a little bit more communication and just having a more of a open line of communication about who is doing what and what the expectations are of each school on a each situational basis, instead of just saying here's the cut and dry rule, just because a lot of times it does come into effect that Cleveland might be closed because they had a lot of drifts, but St. Peter stayed open. So does that mean that we're not having practice? Or are we requiring Cleveland kids to get there even though their school is closed? And so it's just trying to alleviate that, but also allow some flexibility with all the other participants involved as well. And that's a lot of just conversation between superintendents and ADs of all the districts trying to make the best decision. And obviously, if they're all practicing and we decide that it's just too dangerous, we just say St. Peter will not be there today, and they're obviously not held accountable for not making it to practice that day, but that is an option that we obviously have. So that was just trying to making sure that's in there, that everyone kind of has their own option. So inclement weather on there. Pay scale is what I referred to earlier. Next one is obviously probably the big one that people have seen, have heard about. So this is to include a selection policy. Basically, the reason for this is next year we are projected to be at about 46 boys hockey players, with a team being allowed to consist of 20 players at the most. So they're proposing, and a lot of the other all the other districts have okayed this, but it would be a maximum of 35 players. Sorry, I should say a minimum of 35 players. So they always at least have that if they are using the selection policy. will make up the JV and varsity team. If there are more than 35, then they will have a tryout. The selection guideline is listed with what is expected from the coaching staff, as well as what the districts and the parents will be aware of, and athletes. So there'll be a very specific length of the tryout. There'll be a criteria given out beforehand. They'll explain the number of players and the practice and game commitments moving forward, depending on the selection. So each player will be allowed a minimum of 5 practices, must be allowed to participate in an inter-squad scrimmage, must be personally informed of the reason or reasons for not being selected. So you're not just going to have a posting on the door of who's on what team, and if your name's not on there, thanks for coming. Obviously, we're not going to have that. So it's we'll have an individual meeting with each player as the coaching staff, and then if there is foreseen difficulties, the ADs will be involved as well. So this is obviously a big one. Like I said, the reason for it is our projections next year are to have about 46 boys hockey players. As a previous hockey coach, that is a number that's just really is undoable as far as having a practice that is manageable, safe, and also allows you to put together a good, solid program to be competitive at a varsity level. We're looking at 35 as the number because you have your 20 that would dress for varsity, but just like any other sport, usually that bottom 4 or 5 that are on dressing varsity are playing JV to allow for them to get some minutes on the ice, and then we'll just dress varsity to be a part of that experience, maybe not necessarily get to play. So that's the reason for the number for 35 as being the main number. The other piece is, hockey is a bit different in that we aren't able to just say, hey, we do have gym space, you guys can go ahead and go practice. Here's some more jerseys. We have a bunch of towns around us that have a ton of kids going out as well, so we'll find games, we'll find refs, we'll find busing. For hockey, the unfortunate part is every school, the Mankato's, the Owatannas, the cities, they have 2 teams. They have a JV and a varsity, so we don't have a third team to go and play for these kids. So a lot of them are going to say, we can't guarantee you a ton of practice time because we can't fit 45 students on the ice at the same time. Unless we go in the mornings, we don't know how many games you're going to get. So really, we're kind of putting them in limbo as already, which is unfortunate. Hockey, it's an expensive sport. If you haven't seen the numbers, but it's about $195 an hour for ice time, and so that is a part of it as well. And right now, an average practice time for the hockey teams is about 1 hour and 15 minutes a day with 2 teams on the ice at the same time. And so to add in another, potentially 10, 12 kids, as well as basically another team of people on that ice, would just put it in a very difficult situation for us to be successful. This year we did have about 40 to 41. We had a lot of morning practices, which was doable. However, they had to practice about 6 o'clock because of start times from all the different schools, had different start times of school. We wanted to make sure they got back on time. And, they were practicing at 6 a.m., so our bus was leaving here at 5:15 a.m. And again, that additional cost of the hour ice time, the busing is just a lot of different factors that go into it. It is something that nobody wants to bring up or talk about or have as a policy. But as far as hockey goes, I feel it is fair to allow families to have a different option if it's not going to work out. Another option is that there is what's called Junior Gold. It's an association it's run through the association just like their youth association is run, but it's for high school age players that are not on the high school team, so they would still have an option to play the game. It's maybe not in as part of the high school program. So that'd be something we might be able to reach out to. Mankato's, New Prague has a team to allow students to still participate, just maybe in a different avenue. So I'm sure you have questions or other things you maybe want clarified on that policy.
Share a couple questions. You mentioned students are admitted free of charge.
Mhm.
That's just the regular season stuff. When you get into the sections and that, does the high school
Yeah.
league take over?
Yes, yep,
All
that is
that's-
correct. Yep. And that one, that's, like you said, as high school league is mandated on the, whatever those price points are that they tell us.
Right. Second one would be, transportation, and that one scares me a little.
Mhm.
If other districts are allowing their kids to drive to a practice, what is our liability in that sense, since the team consists of 5 districts? If something would happen, you know, are we on hook for legal expenses and so forth in that case?
To my knowledge, we would not be, and I think it is because we have this, that each district is in charge of how they get their students to each event or to each venue.
Okay.
You know, so we have the requirements of our students to ride the bus from the high school to practice, to games, and ride it back. But other schools might not, and there's a variety of reasons for that. Some are that they don't have very many students, so they don't have they don't have a bus to send 4 kids from Belle Plaine to, you know, Le Sueur or things like that. But to my knowledge, I don't believe we would be involved or liable in any way.
Is that something we could check out?
We can, yeah.
I mean, a little bit of cost now might save a lot of cost down the road.
Mr. Cassie, I know we talked a little bit about that
Mhm.
35 number, but I did do some asking around, and it was surprising to me that people were generally in favor of this. I say that because, you know, I was like, but a couple things. So, like, I'm guessing, like, if people are paying this, they would get their fees back,
Of course,
right? So I
of course.
sign up, then never would happen.
Right.
He would get paid, he'd get his money back.
Correct.
How did you arrive at the 35 number? Talk me through that again.
So, like I said, so your varsity team can be, you can dress 20. So it's usually 4 lines of forward, which is 12, 3 lines of defense, which is 6, so you'd have 18, and then 2 goalies. And then for the 35 is, like I said, that 4th line, which is 3 players, and then your last 2 or 3 defensemen, which gives you, you know, putting at 5 or 6, and then your backup goalie are going to dress for that JV game. And so if you're saying, okay, well, varsity is 20 and JV will keep 20, so we're going to keep 40. Well, then even if you dress those JV, you still have 5 that aren't going to play in a JV game because your varsity kids, and this is really any sport, you know, those kids that get to dress varsity are doing it because to get the experience, to see what it's like to be part of that varsity field, but they're playing, you know, their main role is on the JV or B squad or whatever we might term it for that sport. So
Okay.
that's where that 35 number
Okay,
comes
'cause I was
from.
just wondering why it wasn't 40, right?
Right,
'Cause I was 20,
yep.
20, 40.
Yep.
Okay, and then, so I just, because obviously I don't wanna see that go beyond hockey, but I was convinced by many people that hockey is different because of the ice, and then that we needed ice in town, and we needed to build an ice arena, which I
Right.
was like, yeah, we're really gonna do that. But that hockey is different because of the ice factor. So I just wanted everyone to know that I don't anticipate this limiting how many people are in a sport to
No.
really go beyond hockey. I just wanna go on record as saying that.
And I will second that. Like, I don't plan to.
Yeah.
The reason for this in hockey is that ice time piece. You know, we don't have that extra time to give and make sure, and there's not other teams for them to play, so there's a lot of limiting factors. I'm sure if you ask the coaches if they would rather have this selection policy or have the limitations of an hour and 15 practice with 40 kids on one court, they'd probably stick with kind of how we're doing it. So there are a lot of limitations that come into play, which is part of that, like you mentioned. So.
Cause I happened to spend some time with the girls' basketball coach
Sure.
the last week, and he was like totally like could see that difference. So,
Yeah.
cause that's what I was worried about, right? Like we're
Yeah.
gonna do it for hockey, and now they're gonna do it for girls' basketball, and now they're gonna do it for boys' basketball, or
Right.
whatever. But no, so I am supporting that. Not that I decide everything, but I did give a
Yeah.
lot of thought about that because
Yeah.
it's just very different than anything we've done. But speaking of ice, do we ever use ice time up at Gustavus? Did we used to?
We do, yes.
We do?
Yep.
Okay.
When it's available, like our youth association tries to gobble up as much of it as it can, just because that association is overflowing. But we do try to get, I bet boys and girls between the two of them practiced a few times a month at least up there throughout the season.
Okay. And then, for the pay scale, please see attached, is that
Yeah.
just, that's not attached?
That's just, we haven't finalized it yet.
Ah.
Like I said, it'll be
Okay.
something that'll be trying to find a very similar between all the districts combined, as well as what's already been paid, because we're not gonna go in and tell us
Okay.
they're not gonna get paid as much, so it's kind of trying to find that middle ground.
So are we approving this tonight then?
We need the motion, yeah.
So,
Shay, is 20 the state tournament figure too for hockey?
yes. Yes.
So there's no worry about having to weed it down more?
No, and this was the number that, like I said, like, doesn't thrill me either, but I do see the reason behind it.
Yeah.
I coached with these numbers before, and it was a lot of asking kids to not practice that day and things like that, which is not fun either, and so it's an necessary evil, I guess, but yeah, it would not be all of a sudden that, well, they can only dress 18, so we're actually thinking less people. It's been 20 for as long as I know, so.
Oh, and then the other thing that I was asked about, so I just wanna say it because so many people watch this school board meeting, is that, like, the numbers for Belle Plaine, and I ask you this too,
Yes.
like, the last people into the co-op were like Belle Plaine and
Yep.
Cleveland. Talk a little bit about that, how many
Yeah.
athletes we have on those.
So we do have and that was one thing coming up is, if we get to that point, so every time the high school league does a review of the section placements, our co-op is big enough that it gets placed into the AA classification, which would not do us any good for our program going to play Minnetonka and seeing how that goes, right? So we petitioned down to single A, but part of that agreement on here, I believe it's at the end here, is that if we aren't ever granted that waiver to stay in single A, we would be looking to remove a school that would get us below that cap line, whatever that number might be, and it varies year to year. So usually we're looking at, last in, first out type of situation, which in this case would be Belle Plaine. A lot of times that would get us below that number. And we talked about this with Tracy, is that the issue is if we ask them to do that now, right now they're at about 2 or 3 students, which then we're still in the same boat as far as the selection policy, because we're at 42 instead of 45 or 43, 46. So it doesn't really solve our problem, other than, dwindling down a little bit. And Cleveland is the same. They don't bring a lot of kids to our program. Now those numbers might be increasing at the youth level. I don't know what those numbers are off the top of my head, but in the past years it's been maybe 4 to 5 total between the two schools.
Shay, you alluded earlier to the numbers in the junior program are pretty significant.
Yeah.
Do you foresee a time when we could be a standalone?
For St. Peter alone, I think a lot would have to take place. Tracy mentioned earlier we'd probably need to get another sheet of ice, which would be a whole nother.
Is that the Rockcassie Arena?
What's that?
The Rockcassie Arena?
Yeah, that'll be coming right up, everyone. But yes, that would be that would be step one. I think if we had that, you could see numbers increase. But right now, we usually are probably last year we had 13 students, 10 through 12 on the varsity boys program. Next year, I think we'll probably be right around there to 13 to 15. When I was coaching, the most we had, I think, was 18 to 19. So, to go and stand alone all by yourself with that, you'd be taking your lumps for a few years to build it back up, I guess, but I wouldn't say never, but I don't know if it's down the road very soon.
You mentioned 46 potential boys next year.
Yeah.
Do you know what the girl numbers might be?
Next year we'll be at about 23, I believe,
Okay.
after losing the seniors and bringing in, and then we have a pretty big class that will be in the 25-26 season, so it'll
Okay.
jump back up.
Good.
But, yeah, 23, I believe, is the number I was
Okay.
given by the
And
coach.
I just wanted to add also, it's very nice to have you here. Activities are a big part of our program, so thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We need a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the hockey co-op agreement.
A second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Discussion. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have approved the hockey cooperative agreement. Thank you, Chip.
Thank you.
Now we're going right in.
Yeah, but just stay right here.
Stay right in the hot seat.
Information
All
items,
right.
activities director update.
This one will be a little more lighthearted, so. Well, just as an update, I was asked to kind of start doing a quarterly update, which I think is probably something that is a good, and happened that March was one of those quarterly updates, which comes at a very good time. As of last week was a pretty exciting and chaotic week. As you know, we had the end of our winter season with the girls basketball last weekend, and overall our winter seasons went fantastic. We had a wrestler make it to qualify for a state individual tournament, 2 gymnasts qualify as well, and then we had the last 2 weeks we had some amazing basketball games. With if you went to any of the games between the girls at home at Gustavus and up at the U, and then the boys game in New Ulm, it was kind of like you look at and like, this is what high school athletics should be about. It was a community. There was a lot of people there from both sides. It was a fun atmosphere of people cheering for their teams, and it was a pretty cool experience overall. But the girls basketball obviously kind of highlights what our winter season had. Finished 29-3, consolation bracket champions, and brought home some hardware at the 3A state basketball tournament, which is phenomenal. We did have one athlete named to the all tournament team, Ryan Holmgren, and she's also going to be representing St. Peter at the All-Star game here in a couple of weeks, and so that's pretty exciting to have that publicity out there as well, and what she's doing as a student athlete for us. And the community support overall was just fantastic throughout the entire winter and spring or fall, I should say, for that matter, since we haven't had one since then. But it was very, very fun to see, very exciting. If you were at Gustavus for the girls' games, like our side was completely packed and with some community members, so it was a lot of fun and a great way to cap off a very fun winter season. Other updates, the biggest one being from our conference. So the Big South Conference is the conference that we're in for athletics and activities. And so we have had quite a few discussions over the last month or two with our other member schools to try and kind of come up with what is the best option moving forward. It was getting to be a point where we had too many different moving pieces about what we were doing. For example, volleyball was doing an East and West in our conference. Basketball was doing 3 pods, and then baseball and softball were doing big and small. So kind of each sport did its own thing, which, when you're looking at it as a sport, maybe makes sense, but you're looking at it the broad picture as a family member or even as an AD, a lot of it was like, this is like kind of too much to wrap your head around, especially when you have so many schools. And so we tried to come together and come up with an agreement that makes most sense to give us the best options as a conference for geography was coming into play, what we offer as far as competitive teams that we can play against one another, section opponents, and then size of school as well. And so what we have just come up with is going into like black and gold divisions, those being the colors of the conference logo, and our division. And then this would be for a majority of our activities. So volleyball, boys and girls cross country, girls tennis, boys and girls basketball, wrestling, gymnastics, baseball, softball, boys and girls golf, and then track and field as well. Our side or our division would be Worthington, Marshall, New Ulm, St. Peter, Waseca, and then now next year adding TCU and Belle Plaine. So a lot of schools that are similar in size, but also very close. We do have the further trips in Worthington and Marshall, but pretty much every sport was making those trips anyhow because of them being in our section and similar in size and things like that. So, so that would be how it's going to be set up for a majority of our sports. For boys and girls hockey, it's similar, but our side will be Marshall, Waseca, New Ulm, and then us as Minnesota River. And then for boys and girls soccer, it's more on geography, but it's Waseca, TCU, St. Peter, and New Ulm. And then depending on how often you play, teams will depend on the sport. So some will play each school twice in their side. Some will play, so hockey and soccer, you're playing every team on your side twice, then the other side one time. So it kind of depends on, especially the main reason being the number of activities or events that you're allowed to host. So basketball, you have 26, you're going to be able to play those teams more often than volleyball, who has 16 or 17. So that's the main piece there. We do offer speech, one-act play, and choral festivals that will be all as one as a conference, and depending on how many schools offer that, we might break into two, and sometimes we host, sometimes we go to different schools. And then we also will be doing a leadership conference, which we have the last number of years as one large conference as well. So those are kind of the big main changes to our conference. We'll be getting rid of showcase days, and then we'll also but we'll still be having our conference championship type events and things like that. So kind of the biggest change is that sticking to that 2 division throughout the fall to spring compared to mix and match.
Did you mention boys tennis, or did I miss it?
Yeah, sorry, that would be the Worthington, Marshall, New Ulm, St. Peter. That'd be one of the main ones, yep. And that might change a little bit for boys tennis. Like Marshall does not have it, so we would remove them, but Fairmont would be joining our side. So just to even out the numbers, yes. So a lot of it kind of depends on there might be some mixing and matching, but overall, ours will be pretty well set, which I think is the best for our conference as a whole. It's a pretty good setup for St. Peter, geography-wise, competition-wise, offerings-wise as well. So, and then other than that, spring sports have officially started. Last week was softball and track and field. This week, baseball and boys and girls golf got started. And then next week is tennis. Adaptive bowling is going on. Our spring play is up and running, headed for early May as the performances. And obviously we have our concerts, 7th and 8th grade tonight. High school has one tomorrow, and then other band and other choir concerts throughout the spring as well. So things are kind of calm compared to last week, and it's supposed to snow. All right, so that's how the spring will go, but that's all right.
Charles? I'd be remiss because I get hammered on this all the time, and I've spoken to you about it before, but do we have a requirement of our coaches to put the results into the free press?
Yes, they send them in. I know that our basketball coaches email them in, and I know a lot of times they don't get posted. We try to send them out through social media as well, but yeah.
'Cause it's weird. I mean, for instance, when Jordan was here, the boys played first, I believe, the girls second. The girls' score was in, but the boys wasn't. I mean, you could understand if it was flip-flop and the last game didn't get in time, but when the last one gets in and the first one gets overlooked, you wonder what's going on.
I'm not sure. I know I do ask that the coaches send them in. I guess I don't check their emails, but I'm under the assumption that they're sending them in and recording them.
Yeah, the boys at coffee get awfully excited.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense. So.
Thanks for your work on
Yeah.
the conference stuff, because
Yeah.
I know that was probably a lot of work, but it was kind of a mess.
It was.
It
It'll
started
be-
out good, and then a lot of add-ons kind of went onto it, and it got a little kind of crazy.
It did. It was time to just take a step back and revamp. So we'll be in a good spot moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Megan gets to come up again.
Yeah, driver's ed vehicle. Megan.
Is it out in the parking lot for us to go?
Do we get
I
to test
drove it
drive?
here. I even parallel parked. All right, so I will talk fast. Mr. Clubbin came to us earlier this year. The driver's ed car had what is the word I'm looking for? They had looked over the driver's ed car, had a few things that needed to be fixed, and then he inquired longer picture, bigger picture, when are we going to replace the car? We bought it in October of 2015, has quite a few miles on it. So we asked around with other districts to see whether they purchased or leased. 100% of them said that they purchased their vehicles, and so we are recommending that we purchase a new driver's ed car with our operating capital funds. We are still unsure what we are going to do with the existing driver's ed car. It might be Bill's new car, I'm not 100% sure, but we are going to replace the driver's ed car, and then we're still playing around with ideas for what to do with the existing one.
And that's generally a used vehicle that's purchased.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And we are going to try our best to shop locally. We would love to shop at loggers. It kind of depends on availability. We found a few things like in Waseca and New Ulm. So there are some vehicles available that are close to us. At this time, loggers doesn't have anything, but I know Mr. Clubbin has been inquiring, and so that would be what we would like to do if we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, time for reports.
All right, well, big teeth, but I get to start. I think the last time we were here, we were just a week ahead of the kindergarten registration night, open house, and we had 80 families that came through that night. Unfortunately, not all of them were registered at that time, so we'll continue to solicit registrations from those families. We now at least have contact information for them, so our hope is to get our enrollment to at least the 135 that we have this year. We also finished up access testing with our ELL learners, so we're excited to see where our students come out with all of that, and I believe that is happening district-wide. I'm not sure how far everyone else is in that, but we completed ours today. And Friday is the close of the third quarter, so we're looking forward to a PBIS, school-wide PBIS celebration on Wednesday, as well as a teacher workday on Friday. And we are keeping it brief.
Keep it brief. All right, greetings from North Elementary. March 7th, we had our annual Arts and Academic Night. It was a great night. It was pre-packed. Mr. Rosso, I believe I saw you there as well.
Next year I'm in the spelling bee.
Yeah, next year, and yeah, you get through the qualifier. You have to get through the classroom level first. You can do it. So big shout out to Hallie Lind, who got first. Second was Declan Nordstrom. He was first last year, and third went to Ruby Vanderlinden. This year's spelling bee, and that takes a lot of courage to get up there in front of. There's about a little over 100 people usually in the crowd, maybe 150. So it's a pretty packed event, and that's just a great night. Talent all over the building. So thanks to our coordinators for that. They do a phenomenal job. Another competition we have just wrapped up, Continental Math. We had a little bit different structure for that this year. We actually invited any student at our second, third, and fourth grade to participate, and Mr. Robinson was the coach this year, and he just offered a certain number of coaching sessions on various nights, and then they had competitions. So second and third graders had 3 competitions that they could participate in, and then fourth grade had 5. And so we had first or third place winners, and a lot of students participated. Some were in and out, and they certainly were challenged. So we liked that format because it just opened it to everybody. Like anybody could participate and compete. Jungle Book play tryouts and parts are going on right now, and that's going to be huge. Right around 80 students show a lot of interest, so there's a lot. It's big. It's really big.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. It's very awesome. So director, Dustin Lenhoff has been doing it a number of years, and he actually secured a grant through the Prairie Lakes Regional Arts Council, $2,500 to put toward more support for the program, which he will need with 80 students participating. So that's great. That's the first time for that. And then a couple of individual events. Last week we had our mathathon, which happens to be on Pi Day. And so students working on math for an hour long, and they get gets sponsored for that, and those funds go to PBIS to buy shirts for kids, for North Shirts and things like that. So thanks to the community and families that participated and sponsored students. And then we also have a date coming up this week, 3/21, which represents Trisomy 21 Day, which is World Down Syndrome Day. Trisomy 21 is the clinical term for the diagnosis of Down syndrome. And I happen to know a self-advocate who happens to live in the Doherty household currently, and he will be presenting to just about every classroom on Wednesday, and then his hope is get as many kids to participate in wearing the crazy colored socks in order to represent self-advocacy in World Down Syndrome Day. So stop on into North if you want to catch Mason Doherty in action around the building.
If anyone can
If you can-
convince
if-
them
if-
it's Mason, that's for sure. I believe that we were just heading into the week that we were hosting Black Joy Day at the high school the last time that we had a board meeting. So I know a few of you were able to make it, and we were very happy to see you there. It was, speaking of budget, the whole thing was we were able to put that on because of donations from the Good Neighbor Diversity Council. $2,000 from that organization and $5,000 from Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I've got to thank John Warren again for all of the work that he put in on that, as well as a teacher, a group of teachers that dedicated a lot of time. It was a great day. Also, FFA week, I believe, was the week following that. So our two brand new teachers, St. Peter grads, pulled that one off, and that was a really fun week. It always is. Jacob Pearson and Jasmine Whitty did a fantastic job with that. And I gotta thank the girls basketball team for just a super fun season. It was just great following them throughout the whole season, and especially their games at state. So thanks to those girls.
All right.
And coaches.
Yes, and coaches. At Rock Bend, we are actually back to a waiting list. So we talk about enrollment numbers going down, but we are back to a waiting list. We have 2 students from outside of the St. Peter School District hoping to get in. We recently took our students to the new fire station in town. There's some interest in becoming firefighters, so we all went and did that. We have several career events coming up. Job Corps, there's a small group of students going to check out Job Corps tomorrow, and then the Career Expo is in early April. We just finished a really successful night school session, quarter 3. 90% of the enrolled students earned credit, which is awesome. And we had about 5 students earn credit in more than one class, which that we've never had that many students finish more than one class. So just a thank you to our teachers who are doing such good work there, and the students, of course. Referral letters for the final session of night school this year are going out this week and next week as we wrap up 3rd quarter grades at the high school. And then we are planning for summer school as well. And at Oshawa, we are still seeing an increasing enrollment as well. Our enrollment is up 40%, and I put it in percentage form because the jump from 18 to 26 may not seem large, but I mean, it is a 40% increase in students for us, and that makes a big difference in our small space. And I just thought it was interesting to share that our age demographic just continues to go down. So 3 years ago, we were 30% middle school students, so 5 through 8, then we were 35, and now we're at 39% middle school students, so almost half and half. So just as that enrollment goes up, we're just seeing more middle school kids. So that's what's happening in alternative programs.
And there's a middle school concert tonight, which is where
John is.
Yes. Dr.
Dr.
Graff that's the other big news from the middle school. Don't forget to go to the doctor next time. He loves it.
Thank you all. Mr. Ronstadt.
Yes, Director Kaut and myself spent the day at the Capitol today with MSBA, MASA Day at the Capitol. We had an opportunity to hear from people from both organizations, but also a couple of panels, one of senators, another of representatives, and then he and I had some meetings with individual legislators and had good conversations about education finance, education policy. I think that there's a good understanding that last session was a lot, with 1,400 education bills and 65 new mandates, and it's clear that there was not enough funding. One of the bills that has been passed into law already is some changes to the SRO language. You may remember after legislation last year, there was there was a lot of conversation between police departments and school districts, and some police departments pulled out of school districts. And I think that the changes that have been made, reinstating some of the reasonable use of force by police officers, will go a long way to bringing SROs back into schools and helping them to feel more comfortable in schools again. So thank you to legislators for that work. There's also a lot of discussion about READ Act 2.0, but today we learned that it could be 8.0 because 8 different versions have been presented already, each with some adjustments to the funding piece, to some of the requirement pieces, and we have, well, that is something that we will be watching closely, because we know that it also has financial implications for the district. We know there's a long way to go for the legislative session. The deadlines for having a first reading for anything to be considered is coming up next week. So after next week, there would be no new bills included unless something got put into an omnibus bill that we know sometimes happens, so those are important to watch as well. So thank you, Director Kaut, for spending the day with me at the Capitol, for having some great conversations. I too wanted to give a shout out to the girls basketball team, and for the first ever and probably likely never again Saints Day that happened because we had a snow dayless winter followed by a team going to state, which made for a fun day. It was great to see so many families in the stands at the state tournament, and it was a good turnout, so thank you for that. Also a shout out to Kimberly Deming, who has been taking notes as fast as she can over there this evening, and has been doing a wonderful job since joining the district office just a week ago today. So
Welcome.
things are moving quickly. Yeah. And also, not to end on a terrible subject, but the budget is something that we don't take lightly. I know that there are a lot of difficult decisions and a lot of difficult discussions that lie ahead of us, and all the voices matter in this decision, every part of the district, and know that as we do this, there are so many people in the district, staff, students, board members, constituents, who put a lot of time and effort and passion into developing the very best programming that we can for our students and our community. And none of us have come into this to face a budget like we are and see us kind of pull things apart that we really don't want to pull apart. But it is our fiduciary responsibility as a district to make sure that we are operating within the boundaries of our budgets, and we will do the very best that we can together to come up with the best plan for our district for the near future anyway.
Thanks. Board members around the table. Ms. Rossbach.
Welcome to Kim. Thank you for joining us, and congrats to the basketball team at the high school. I think that's fantastic.
Thanks. Ken?
Thank you, administrators, your patience in going over everything. It's a long evening to sit there. Just so Kimberly knows, because of your first night, we try to keep this meeting short. So- Just kidding. Welcome.
I just want to say a little bit. I was up at the state tournament and have the privilege of kind of spending an extended length of time with our basketball team. And granted, I think the coaches are fabulous because my husband is one of them. But specifically with the basketball team, and I don't get to spend a lot of time with high school kids. And they lost that first game by 1 point. And I got to watch the girls. Like, first off, they were heartbroken. Like, their goal was they were going to win that first game. They knew it was going to be tough, but they were going to win it. And they were going to have the TV game, right? They were going to win it. They were going to play against that really hard next game, and they maybe were going to win that, or maybe they weren't, but they were going to win it. And they lost by 1, right? And that's heartbreaking. We went back to the hotel, and they just held each other up. There was, one with a rolled ankle. We have one with a back that can barely walk. This, pneumonia. We have all this stuff going on, but they held each other up. They had a horrible night. The coaches are sad. Everyone's sad, but the next day they pulled it together and they had 2 more amazing days and they came out with a victory. And just watching them kind of hold it, it was amazing to watch. And they crushed it and they had 2 great games, but there was just good sportsmanship. It was fun watching the community come, even for that second game. Like, honestly, we thought there was going to be 10 people in the stands, and there wasn't. There was a good number of people there. I got to see, students, actually still cleaning up the popcorn bags, even though nobody was there to tell them to clean it up. And it was just fun. I mean, I kept saying there's nothing greater than a Raider, because I'm from Nicollet. But really, the Saints are pretty awesome. And so it was a really, really fun experience. The bus driver was into it, the coaches are awesome, and I just felt really, really proud to be from St. Peter's. So it was really awesome. So that's all I wanted to say.
Great. Thanks. Mr. Cow?
Yeah, Bill kind of stole all the thunder about
sorry.
That's okay. The legislative day at the Capitol. I guess for those of you who have the time, our lobbyists put on a chat every Friday morning at 9 o'clock. And if you need the Zoom address for that, just shoot me a text or an email and I'll send it to you. Because it usually comes out on Thursday. So there are going to be a lot of interesting things with the legislature, and as usual, it's our job to point out the unintended consequences of some of the bills that are passed. Especially we talk about some of the labor situations. I don't know if you heard now, but there's a bill going forth in one of the 2 houses that is going to give striking unions the right to collect unemployment if they go on strike. And what MSBA is trying to point out to the legislators is, given the uniqueness of a school district where we're required to have so many hours of education, if one of our bargaining units would go on strike and school was not able to be held, they could all collect unemployment. And then we would settle and they would have to come back and make up the days they missed, so that in reality, by getting that unemployment, they would get paid twice for that day. And it's little things like that as we're made aware of those, they ask for us to communicate to our legislators. So I'll try and keep you informed of the requests that are coming through that, our lobbyists in that chat line. Other than that, I would like to say thank you to Kate for all her work with Kimberly on the election, and lining up judges and so forth. It's a crucial thing. And if you don't have judges, it's kind of hard to hold an election. So thank you to both of you for the efforts. I mean, talk about jumping in with both feet. Really. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon?
No, I'm gonna, nothing.
Ms. Martin?
And I just wanna say to Kimberly, thank you, because she started before she started here, with this election stuff and getting it all put together, so congratulations, and what a wonderful district with kids, it's just amazing, you know? Alright,
Awesome, thank you. We've got the upcoming committee meetings listed in the agenda, all leading up to the regular board meeting on Monday, April 15th. We can be right back here.
So we need to get our taxes done before 6.
Exactly. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a great night.
Thank you.